On behalf of the Staines Family Foundation and the North Lawndale community, we welcome you to the North Lawndale Reads celebration. In the aftermath of the devastating losses suffered by COVID-19, anti-Blackness, and economic violence, celebration might seem like an indulgence. Some might be wondering, what is there to celebrate? But the simple answer is you, your students, and every North Lawndale community member who creates or supports a positive life trajectory for North Lawndale's children. We are here to celebrate your resilience. We are here to celebrate your commitment. We're here to celebrate all that you accomplished before the pandemic and all that your talent, time, and drive will allow you to accomplish in its aftermath. We're here to celebrate the power in our collective work, and our collective focus, and our collective discipline to nourish our students and ourselves with the knowledge and skills we need to defeat all weapons formed against our community and our innocent children. One of the most powerful weapons in our toolbox is literacy. It unlocks access to knowledge, and it is a gateway to high school graduation, college readiness, and ultimately fulfilling lives for North Lawndale students. So we will celebrate our focus on this important goal of third grade literacy proficiency, on all that we've achieved so far, and we will celebrate where we're going next in our collective journey to unlock the powerful, life-changing tool of literacy for our younger students, homing in particularly on our most vulnerable students, our Black boys. And now I'm going to turn it over to Naya Flores Toussaint, who will be our MC for the evening.
Thank you so much, Yolanda, for those inspiring words about North Lawndale Reads past, present, and future. We are excited to see the vision further actualized. From Kelman to Legacy to Sumner to Webster, good afternoon, North Lawndale. My name is Naya Flores Toussaint, and I will be your host this afternoon. I joined the Staines Family Foundation in welcoming you to North Lawndale Reads Year 7 celebration. We are excited and grateful to celebrate the service of teachers, principals, and staff like you who go above and beyond to ensure students have all the fundamentals. So although we are all remote, I hope we can tap into our celebratory spirit to honor all that you have done in unprecedented times to ensure Lawndale students are readers. Take a second to applaud yourself and your fellow educators. Come on, wherever you are. Let's clap those hands, let's shake hands, whatever we need to do to feel celebrated now. So, we will kick off our program with words from our community about the ways your work impacts students' lives, not only within our schools, but also outside of them. And then you will hear from North Lawndale Reads partner organizations about how your ability and creativity in helping students to read during these times grants us all new vision for what the future can hold. We will also have the privilege to have an intimate and in-depth conversation with Dr. Lionel Allen and Dr. Rashad Anderson about supporting Black boys' reading achievement. We will wrap up today's program with a Q&A, so get those questions for our speakers, Dr. Allen and Dr. Anderson, ready. I will also share with you more information about our live raffle drawing and prizes as we move through our programming. So if you have not used your 3 raffle tickets to take your chance at winning big, please do so before our drawing closes in 15 minutes. You can use the link in the chat to cast your bets, and to increase your chances at winning your desired prize, feel free to put multiple tickets to one prize. Good luck, everyone. Now we will hear from important voices in our North Lawndale community. It is clear that the literacy goals of North Lawndale Reads impact every aspect of students' learning, as it also impacts our collective community experiences as well. I welcome 3 community leaders, Mr. Rodney Brown, who leads North Lawndale Community Coordinating Council, Pastor Phil Jackson of the Firehouse Community Arts Center, and Dr. Betty Green, the Executive Director of Lawndale Amachi Mentoring Program and longtime committee co-chair of North Lawndale Community Coordinating Council. Additionally, we will hear from a very important voice from our community, Amaya Bell, a legacy alum and current student at Washington University in St. Louis. Each will share thoughts on how your efforts to help students read have impacts that resonate with students, families, and organizations across the community. So please join me in welcoming them.
Our mission and objectives in North Lawndale Community Coordinating Council is to make sure that we build a community that is full of leaders. So as we look at understanding where we're going forward, it is important to us that our children are able to read at a level that's proficient at the third grade level. This is important to our community because third grade is the grade in which students are learning the final stage of reading. Up until that point in time, they're being taught how to read. After the third grade, they're reading to learn. Studies show that if they are not proficiently reading by the end of the third grade, more than half of the information they secure after that will be incomprehensible to them. The State Department has determined that if they are not proficiently reading by the end of the third grade, that is a high predictability that they will not finish high school. When we look at our goals and objectives for North Lawndale and North Lawndale Community Coordinating Council, it is important that we have people, students that are graduating from high school. State Department has also said that there is a high connection to people in prison who are not able to read above the fourth grade level. So what that does is that promotes violence, that promotes crime, that promotes all kinds of things that are counterproductive to our community. So it is important to us that our students are taught how to read well at the third grade level so that we are in a position where we can discontinue the violence and crime that's going on in the community right now. Our goals and objectives, our metrics, if you will, include having our students complete high school and move on to post-secondary education. Our goals and objectives include them being able to help decrease the unemployment rate in North Lawndale. We all know that if you are not a successful reader, if you cannot read well, you will not be a candidate to have a good, well-paying, career-based job or even start a business and completely successfully run that business. So when we look at our success metrics, we also talk about making sure that we have individuals that can come back to the community and build with the community. You cannot do that if you're not a successful reader. Our goals and objectives include making sure that we build an environment whereby our students can become leaders in this community. So we're looking to make sure that as we move forward, we're creating an environment where they learn how to read early, they're enjoying the learning process, and therefore they're not going to be in a position where they drop out early. With the predictability that if they can't, they will drop out of high school, that is counter to what's important to us. So when you ask me why is it important that our children are able to read by the third grade, it is because our mission includes developing leaders. Our mission includes building a community that is successful based on the people that are here now. We're looking to make sure that as we continue to complete the mission at NLCCC, that the children that are here now are here to help execute that mission and help us be in a position where we can be successful. Thank you.
Literacy lives in the firehouse through the arts by way of giving opportunity for young people to see their own genius. Oftentimes in spaces such as North Lawndale, giving freedom to be your own genius has been thwarted by situations of the neighborhood or of their own background. But literacy gives you the freedom in the arts to say, I can do this. I did create that. I did say this. I am that genius that I knew I always could be. Through literacy and through spoken word that we engage in at the firehouse gives young people the freedom to have that voice, that their voice does count, and that their voice can move things around, move issues of injustice, move issues of awareness of their own struggle, move issues of awareness of their own uniqueness and brilliance. And so through spoken word, through literacy that we engage in at the firehouse, it gives voice to young people that gives them the courage to say, I do count and I do belong.
Thank you for the amazing job you do with our children every day. You are teachers who set the bar high. You have high expectations for the students. You motivate them to keep trying until they accomplish their goal. You teach them that failure is okay as long as they pick themselves up and try again. You don't just teach, you inspire. You inspire hope. You ignite their imagination, and you instill a love for learning. You are some of those teachers who tell the children where to look, but you don't tell them what to see. You empower them to be the best students they can be. Prior to COVID, sometimes children came to your class with a sad face. You looked in their face and felt they needed a hug, and you gave them a big hug because you didn't realize what they had to go through to get to your class. But that one hug that you gave them made all the difference and helped them get through the day. And the words of Maya Angelou, we may not remember what you did. Children may not remember what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. You are heroes and sheroes who 100 years from now, people will forget what kind of car you drove, what kind of clothes you wear, what kind of house you live in, how much money you had. But the world will never forget the difference you made in the lives of the children in North Lawndale. If a good teacher deserves an apple, you deserve a whole orchard. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amaya. I am a senior at Washington University in St. Louis, double majoring in psychology and educational studies with a minor in speech and hearing sciences. The elementary school I attended was Legacy Charter School. My earliest literacy memory is playing with a bucket of magnetic letters, and I was able to identify each letter in no particular order and place it on the refrigerator at around 3 years old. I think being able to identify the letters helped me learn to read and spell by 4 years old. A positive memory from first grade that relates to reading or learning to read is when I learned about the Junie B. Jones book series. For homework, we had to complete weekly reading logs, so I would read the Junie B. Jones books for my log. And I remember one time I read one of the books in one day. And when I didn't check out the books at Legacy, I would go to the nearest library by my grandmother's house and get more Junie B. Jones books. When I think about being literate, I think it allows me to participate in school and further my learning. And reading and writing are essentially all that I do in college. And so it's important that I'm able to understand what I'm reading so that I can write my papers. And more broadly, being literate just allows me to participate in society and helps me make sense of the world around me. Together, we can do this.
Thank you to our community members for those inspiring words and profound reminders about the importance of the work these teachers we celebrate today are already accomplishing. And thank you, Amaya, for sharing your journey with us. After more than 18 months of drastically transforming education to meet the needs of the current times, you educators, which we celebrate today, have maintained high standards for young people while believing that this new normal would not hinder their access to one of life's most important fundamentals. For Amaya, her journey to Washington University in St. Louis started with a bucket of magnet letters. I can only imagine where your students will go from your commitment and creativity. Before we move on to hearing from our partner organizations, I would like to highlight one of our raffle items that will be picked at the end of our celebration. First, we have a Treat Yourself card that can be used at Macy's, Grubhub, Cheesecake Factory, Outback, Buffalo Wild Wings, or Athletica. Self-care is easy when you have this many options, so sign up to win before our raffle closes. Now, we know that several members of our audience are new to North Lawndale Reads, but even for those who are longtime family, it is always good to recall the mission that brings us all here. So Yolanda, I would like to turn it back over to you for a bit of history about North Lawndale Reads and its mission and motto. Then we will turn it over to the North Lawndale Reads community partners as they reflect on their journey with you all through the pandemic and this past year and a half.
The Staines Family Foundation does place-based grant-making in Chicago's North Lawndale community. Although they face many barriers born of historic and ongoing institutional racism, those who live, work, and learn in North Lawndale maintain a proud legacy of resilience and social activism. In 2015, the Staines Family Foundation sought to significantly increase the percentage of children in the North Lawndale neighborhood who read proficiently by 3rd grade. This is a critical milestone for future academic success. The initiative was planned with school principals, community leaders, and neighborhood residents, and their voices were clear. While all students need literacy-rich environments and consistent, high-quality instruction to reach literacy goals, North Lawndale students need more. Because literacy development occurs within and is influenced by home, school, and neighborhood contexts, a holistic approach to 3rd grade reading was required. With this guidance from community members, the foundation launched North Lawndale Reads, a comprehensive approach to early literacy achievement. We galvanized around the common goals of facilitating and removing barriers to grade-level reading achievement, and we have seen substantial literacy growth among the students served by our teachers and community partners. The North Lawndale initiative included traditional reading improvement methods such as balanced literacy coaching for teachers and principals, family engagement, support for children's social and emotional development, and high-quality summer learning opportunities. It takes a village for every child's success, but in our most vulnerable communities, the village members must meet up and work at many intersections to support achievement that lasts. We look forward to continuing our partnership with all of you to serve students and families through North Lawndale Reads and many more programs to come.
Hello, everyone. It's Greg Brown, Chicago Director of the AARP Foundation Experience Corp. At Experience Corp, our mission is to engage highly trained adults over the age of 50 to help young scholars reach literacy proficiency by the end of 3rd grade. In our program, students must succeed as scholars and volunteers must thrive as tutors. Over the past 7 years, as proud partners of the North Lawndale Reads family, Experience Corp Chicago has served 5 schools across the community, engaged hundreds of volunteer tutors across the community, and supported thousands of students in our classrooms. On behalf of the Experience Corp Chicago team, the one thing that I'm most proud of is connecting the wisdom and the life experiences of our volunteers to the potential and the enthusiasm of our young scholars.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claire Parker, and I work for Children's Literacy Initiative. I have had the pleasure of partnering with several of the NL Read schools over the last 7 years, providing coaching and intervention support. I am always incredibly impressed by the dedication to the children by the teachers, principals, interventionists, and staff. But I was truly in awe of the commitment to connection that all of you showed over the last 18 months. In the spring of 2020, everyone had to completely reimagine the way in which we taught our children. We watched all of our educators rise to the challenge and innovate at lightning speed. Our teachers, interventionists, and administrators ensured that every child still felt connected to their schools and to each other. We watched our teachers and interventionists create engaging and thoughtful lessons during virtual and hybrid instruction. And the children were motivated to show up and learn and grow. Over the last 18 months, all of you connected with children during incredibly challenging times. You got to meet family members and family pets. You got to see favorite outfits and favorite snacks. And you made connections with every child and helped them grow. Thank you for all you do.
I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to learn with and from the incredibly talented, dedicated, innovative, and resilient leaders, teachers, children, coaches, interventionists, families, caregivers, and our NL Reads partners. It's truly been an amazing journey. In our collective efforts to grow powerful readers, writers, and thinkers, and with the generous support of the Staines Family Foundation, over the last 7 years, CLI has served over 900 children and 32 teachers. We have provided over 7,000 high-quality books and materials that send affirming messages, heighten joy, serve as windows and mirrors, and allow for numerous entry points for instruction. We've also provided 16 seminars and 3,000 hours of job-embedded coaching to teachers. And most importantly, we have developed and nurtured strong, caring, and trusting relationships with all stakeholders throughout the year, which has been truly instrumental in our success and getting more kiddos reading and writing on grade level. Cheers to another year of collaboration, innovation, and impact for all.
Greetings, my name is Amina White-Jones, and I'm the Director of Community Impact at Illinois Action for Children. First and foremost, it has truly been a pleasure to work alongside families, our other project partners on this important work, and lastly, the brainchild that put this important initiative together to improve grade level reading at 3rd grade, which is Staines Family Foundation. The components of the work that I am most proud of is how our small but mighty team at Illinois Action for Children has been able to promote and deliver authentic family and community engagement best practices that has allowed us to build trust with families, through which we have seen significant gains in attendance overall with families. Additionally, over the last 7 years, we have collectively built a stronger feedback loop between our families and our community in North Lawndale and with our schools. In addition to that, we've also been able to build a stronger feedback loop with our families in the City of Chicago's Early Learning Department. I can't underscore enough the importance of authentic family and community engagement and strong partnerships in working with families as partners to reach many of the academic outcomes we aim to see.
If I had to narrow it down to one significant accomplishment with being a part of the North Lawndale Reads Initiative, it'll be hard because there's an abundant amount of families over the years that the program has allowed Illinois Action for Children to support and stabilize through the attendance efforts. Illinois Action for Children's goal is to reduce chronic absenteeism in families. However, it's an indicator to help understand some families who are in need of assistance. If children do not show up in school for educational instruction, then they are missing what they need. So attendance is extremely important. And in order for us to work with these families, we have to build these trusted relationships that we have been able to do over the years. I think that we are most proud of the adaptability, the flexibility, the resiliency, and the care that the North Lawndale Initiative community as a whole throughout the partners in the school have shown through this struggle of time within the last 18 months. This initiative has helped support so many families that you would think about, that you will not think about, that you will know of, that you'll never know of.
I just want to thank you all so much for us being a part of this important work.
As Director of Programs for Turning the Page, our proudest moments come from families that spoke so highly of the work we did with them and the community that we hear these praises from other organizations. During the pandemic, it was a goal of ours to make sure that the level of quality engagement we do continued, even though the world has shifted. Our engagement with families never ceased, and we were able to provide activities during the summer, workshops that focused on family engagement, in addition to home drop-off book distribution. It was also during this year that we were able to engage parents and partner organizations through our online digital platform, which is very new to our organization. This past 18 months really showcased our resilience as an agency and how much we can all come together to help the North Lawndale community. As we continue on this journey, I am more than confident that this year will be a year of abundance and continued growth for NL Reads.
Well, first I want to say I'm very proud to be part of this celebration. In terms of a history of JPA and NL Reads, I think one of the accomplishments that I'd like to highlight in terms of growth during the time that I've been at JPA really has to do with the idea of collaboration and unity. That as we've extended our therapeutic efforts to serve children and their families, we've included more connections with not only the children that we work with and the parents and caregivers in their lives, but teachers, other professionals who work with NL Reads, and caregivers. We've been able to identify more comprehensive avenues for intervention in terms of addressing ongoing issues in our children's lives around trauma and ongoing systemic oppression. NL Reads brings together a multitude of resources, each addressing different facets of the overall challenges that impact students and their families' lives and their ability to be literally present in the classroom, being more available to the learning that happens in the classroom. We accomplish so much more as a community of compassionate and invested adults working together to attend to the multitude of needs that our students and their families have. NL Read embodies this and creates opportunities for this kind of collaboration, innovation, and intervention. In terms of the last 18 months, as we've all had to contend with challenges from the pandemic, I'm most proud of how our staff at JPA pivoted to provide badly needed therapy to children and their families virtually. I would also like to speak to how in the process we've made significant inroads into building more therapeutic relationships with caregivers and how this has amplified our ability to have more positive impact in the lives of our clients. This was not an easy task. Doing virtual play therapy with pre-K kindergartners, first graders, took a lot of innovation, creativity, and imagination, dedication, and tenacity of our staff. I'm proud of them. From the time that we began our partnership from 2015 to 2021, we've served approximately 2,000 children in the North Lawndale community. This year, we're hoping to add an additional 420 children that will receive individual counseling, group counseling, and classroom groups that are aimed at enhancing social emotional learning in the schools. Thank you, and I'm proud to be part of this celebration.
Thank you, Yolanda, AARP Experience Corps, Children's Literacy Initiative, Illinois Action for Children, Juvenile Protective Association, and Turning the Page for sharing your vision for the way forward. And now, let's take a look at 2 more raffle prizes. Our second prize is a Bath & Body Works gift card for those who are anxiously awaiting the next buy 2, get 1 free of all the smell goods. Our third raffle prize probably can be used by everyone and anyone, an Amazon gift card. We all know that we have been shopping from the comfort of our homes so much more lately. So this one is for sure to come in handy soon. Now we will hear from some voices that should be very familiar to you all. The principals of Kelman, Legacy, Sumner, and Webster. I know you may hear from these voices often, but I hope you will tune in closely to receive this moment of reflection and vision sharing from your leaders.
Good afternoon. I am Sharice Freeney, the proud principal of the Joseph Kelman Corporate Community School. When I reflect upon the impact that NL Reads has had on my school, I would like to say thank you to the various partners for helping to support us during these crazy pandemic times. I would like to thank JPA for providing social, emotional well-being support to our students, our families, our teachers, and the administrators during that tough time. I would like to say thank you to Turning the Page for providing resources for our parents and students to continue to read. I would like to say thank you to Illinois Action for Children for providing monetary resources and housing resources for our parents to keep them afloat. And thank you to CLI for not missing a beat and providing resources and kits and packets for students the moment that the pandemic hit. As we move forward, it is my hope and my dream for each one of my teachers, students, and families to be equipped with the knowledge and the support and the resources to help them help their children. And through our partnerships with all of the various organizations that we are a part of, they allow that to happen. I am so grateful, and I have been grateful for the 7 years that NL Reads has been a part of our school community. I look forward to continuing that support. And without you, I could not have made it this far through the pandemic. Your support goes beyond words. And I would like to say thank you again from the bottom of my heart, from the entire Kelman community. Thank you.
Every day I stand at the front doors at Legacy and watch the scholars come running into school. I see the smiles in their eyes and hear the stories of what they're looking forward to each day. I'm sure this is repeated at schools all across North Lawndale. Schools serve such a special role in our community, in our country, and in our democracy. This last year has shown how interconnected we all are and the power of collective care. We have all shown up for the last year and a half. We showed up for our scholars, our families, for our partners, and for each other. It was not easy in March of 2020. It did not get easier going fully virtual, or teaching in hybrid, or back to in-person with COVID restrictions. It has remained hard, and yet we keep showing up. We have remained dedicated to our mission. Thanks to the partnership with the Staines Family Foundation that is brought together in the form of North Lawndale Reads, we have wraparound supports to ensure K-3 readers are on a trajectory to life success. We know we're facing unfinished learning and teaching, structural racism, and the weight of society's misguided priorities. We also know our schools are the transformative spaces where 5-year-olds will learn to share, write their own stories, ask big questions, and co-construct their learning. We know the power of our work and that sustained change is possible in the micro sense and in the macro sense. I have seen scholars who came to us in kindergarten graduate from high school and college. I have seen the way families are transformed by being part of a healthy school community. I have seen the power of professional and personal relationships developed and sustained us in this work. I know we are tired at times, and that includes this principal, and for good reason. We have been working hard to be a lifeline in a pandemic. Together, though, we will rebuild our school communities and be stronger than before. I am thankful for everyone who is part of this North Lawndale Reads mission. We are truly better together. In closing, I want to share with you a message from a 4th grade scholar. About 3 weeks ago, she presented me with daily notes, these little handmade envelopes filled with encouraging messages and candy. I'm not sure why she chose to do this. Maybe she sensed that I needed a pep talk. So one day, she gave me this sticky note booklet of things she said Legacy helps her to be. This includes smart, caring, loving, respectful, hopeful, careful, and thankful. Those are the same things that this work gives me, and I hope that it gives you the same as we transform this world by creating our healthy schools and communities. Thank you.
I am Kat Martin. I'm the proud principal of Sumner Math and Science Community Academy, and my hopes for school year 22 include: my hope is for my teachers to absorb all of the resources that we have through this amazing partnership with NL Reads. I hope that you lean into the supports offered by CLI with the coaching available and the supports for our kids. I hope that you feel as though you have the resources needed through our partners with Illinois Action for Children to support our kids with being back in school. I'm so excited that we're able to lean into our partners at JPA so that you know that there's therapeutic resources for our students. And I'm beyond excited to not be pulling as much data by myself because we have an awesome partnership with Intervere that's going to support your ability to kind of mesh with NWEA scores and our performance reports for our 2nd graders so that we know that they are preparing to be on track when they get to 3rd. What I want you to know, and I hope most for you this year, is that you are able, we are capable, and that we can do everything together. At Sumner, we always say one team, one goal, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, that you are the right people on the right bus with me at this time for our kids. So thank you in advance for all of the fabulous things that you will do for our community this year, and I'm blessed to be alongside you.
Hello, my name is Khalid Oluewo, and I am the principal of Daniel Webster Elementary School, where we are Wildcat strong. In my 5th year as principal, the focus on primary literacy continues to be a top priority. We are committed to having proficient readers and writers by the end of 2nd grade with a heightened focus on Black males. I am going to spend a few moments talking about the latter part of that statement, the emphasis on Black male achievement. Due to the challenges of the last 2 school years with the pandemic and remote learning, we have become even more resolute in our determination to dismantle the false narrative attached to Black males. I completely reject any statement that claims that Black males lack the desire or the ability to learn and perform at high levels. The fact that Black males continue to underperform decades after decades is not a reflection of what they can or cannot do. I believe this lack of achievement shows a nation's inability to meet the social, emotional, and instructional needs of our young Black scholars. A more controversial explanation is that the educational system in America was not created for people of color or people in poverty to be successful. So in other words, things are panning out exactly how they were designed. I believe both explanations to be accurate, and I'd rather expend energy combating and dispelling this false notion. I'd rather join forces with those individuals, groups, and organizations that share the same sentiments about Black males. I'd rather connect with those who believe in them and their potential and are willing to take action to disrupt this narrative. This is where the Staines Family Foundation comes in. Since partnering with Staines, we have made huge strides in closing the opportunity gap for Black males at Webster Elementary. We have had more male scholars performing at grade level, more scholars enjoying and attending school because their unique needs are being met, more teachers able to employ sound strategies that engage Black males, a school community shifting from a more punitive approach to discipline to one that is more restorative, and better family engagement because of the support that they are now receiving. These are some of the ways that the Staines Family Foundation provided comprehensive assistance to champion our Black male scholars and our entire school community. Their philosophy is in full alignment with another one of our commitments of creating a safe learning environment that guarantees success for every scholar. As we continue to partner with Staines, we hope to dispel the myth of Black male scholars and prove that when equipped with essential supports, Black males can thrive socially, emotionally, and academically at high levels. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Freeney, Ms. Goss, Ms. Martin, and Mr. Oluwewu for the aspirational visions and words of encouragement you have shared. Before we move on, I cannot forget our last raffle prize, a Visa gift card, a prize that can be used anywhere visas are accepted. So if you have not already, use your 3 raffle tickets right now before the drawing closes and win big today. And so you probably can tell that I'm in a different space than I was before. And that is because we are preparing for our fireside chat, an intimate conversation about how we can support Black boys' literacy proficiency. And so before we move on, I know we've been sitting for a while and you may need a break. So please, let's get up and stretch and do whatever we have to do, get some coffee, move around to overcome this Zoom fatigue, because this conversation is going to be something that you do not want to miss. Lots of knowledge sharing, very profound, and some great recommendations for you to even take with you to the classroom tomorrow. As we move into the last portion of our celebration today, you can tell how excited I am for the speakers we have for you all. With us is Dr. Lionel Allen and Dr. Rashad Anderson, who are here to talk about literacy among Black boys. Dr. Lionel Allen Jr. is a clinical assistant professor of educational policy studies at University of Illinois, Chicago. He has over 20 years of experience as a teacher, assistant principal, and chief academic officer. He is the founder of Ed Leaders Matter, an organization designed to improve schools by focusing on leadership development, as he also is a proud graduate of Chicago Public Schools. Dr. Rashad Anderson serves as an assistant professor of teaching, education, and the campus director of the Call Me Mr. program at South Carolina State University. Central to his work is engaging students, scholars, practitioners, and community members to find and implement effective means to better propel Black youth through K through 12 education settings. As you hear from our speakers, I encourage you to type any questions you may have for them in the chat, and we will have a Q&A after this conversation to answer some of those questions. So let's get started with you, Dr. Anderson. Could you tell me about your early literacy memories and what it was like growing up in a world where literacy is all around us? And then after that, we will hear from Dr. Allen around that same question.
So for me, in elementary school, I struggled a lot with reading. I was blessed to come from a two-parent household, and I remember probably around second grade, I was sent home with a letter from my second grade teacher to my parents, pretty much indicating that I was a struggling reader and that I needed additional help. And my parents ordered me hooked on phonics. And I remember like every single day for an hour after school, I would have to sit down with my mom and dad, and we use hooked on phonics. And I really credit my parents for going out and getting that for me, because I believe that that is what has given me the advantage in my life and my career, because I am now a really strong writer. Is what, you know, definitely assisted me to get through the dissertation process and when I was working on my PhD, and now it's one of my strong suits. I wish they would have got me a kit called Hooked on Math, because my brother's still struggling. I have to pull out my phone and the calculator app. So I should have got on Hooked on Math as a young kid, but Hooked on Phonics definitely helped me. So I guess it really shows that intervention, particularly at the elementary stage, it has an impact that's lasting just beyond second grade. It has an impact now for my entire trajectory of my career, because having my parents do that for me made me such a strong reader and writer even to this day.
Mm-hmm. What a beautiful story. I mean, starting off as a struggling reader as a second grader and now a PhD. I mean, you can't write a better story than that, right? First, thanks for having us, Naya. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So my experiences were a bit different. I went to a magnet school here in Chicago, and so you know, we were considered smart kids walking in the door, and so I think teachers' perceptions of us as smart kids and me as a smart student really helped ground my literacy experience, which was a pretty positive one. You know, I was placed in the higher reader groups when I was, you know, in primary, and I had really encouraging experiences as a student. It really helped shape my identity as a learner and as a scholar very early on. But I remember, though, even though we were in a magnet school and we were technically all gifted in some form or fashion, I remember that students who were not placed in the high groups had fundamentally different experiences than I had as a student, right? And even as a youngster, I was perceptive enough to recognize that, and that troubled me. And so, you know, I carried that experience throughout the rest of my academic career and into my, you know, my life as a teacher and as a school administrator, remembering the disparities in the experiences that students had because of the groups that they were placed in, even as early as first, second, and third grade.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I guess I should share a little bit, because I'm resonating with each of your stories in a way. In the second grade, I also was, well, I should say my mom is a teacher, so I had hawk eyes on me. And I don't know if it was her teacher eyes that were freaking out, or if I actually did have some reading issues. And I still, you know, am holding to the fact that it might be her teacher eyes all these years later. But she asked my school for me to have a reading coach. And I was one of those students, kind of how Dr. Allen just described, that was taken out of the room and had a different experience Yet at the same time, I'm grateful for that experience because where I was taken out, I was given one-on-one attention, and I had a great reading teacher. And so it kind of reminds me of Dr. Anderson's experience with Hooked on Phonics, where I just had this really great experience learning how to read. And though there was some stigma with me leaving the classroom, I was in a place where I felt supported and loved while I was learning how to read. And today, I'm just so grateful to even be here with all of you all who are watching, and these two wonderful academics who really just, I guess what we're noticing is that there is a very how can I say this? There's so much importance on the foundational years when it comes to literacy. Like, we are remembering these 20 years later, these memories, or 30 years later, they're still impacting us. And not just because we're in humanities departments or we like to write and such things, but people remember that. And because they have to read every single day, they're reminded of those memories of that teacher, whether they remember their name or not, or this is what my parents did in regards to reading. So I find this to be such an important conversation that we're having. And so another question I would like to ask, and we'll start with Dr. Allen, what are the barriers to Black boys' literacy? Sorry, let me ask that again. What are the barriers to Black boys' early literacy success? And especially like let's think literacy subjects and such things, because with Dr. Anderson, I'll ask you more so about school success generally.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And we know how important it is, as you just mentioned, because both Dr. Anderson and I were able to very clearly recall those early literacy experiences, right? And Principal Owelu, who is the principal of Webster Elementary, talked about the importance of making sure that they are cultivating proficient readers by second grade. All right, so we're talking about a social justice issue. We're talking about quality of life issues. I mean, health outcomes are impacted by levels of reading proficiency. So this is a real issue that we need to be discussing and hashing out. But to your question around barriers, one, I think that there are many barriers, but I'll talk specifically about three. I think the first barrier to early literacy success, and I think this translates to the overall school experience, is there's an overemphasis as early as pre-K kindergarten on the control and the management of the behavior of Black boys, right? And so immediately entering into a school experience, Black boys feel othered. And when you think about literacy in particular, learning how to read, learning anything, but particularly learning how to read, is a very vulnerable, intimate experience. And young men, particularly Black boys, they're perceptive as early as 3-4 years old. They know when the teacher loves them, cares for them, et cetera. So when they walk into a school and they are othered, when they are made to feel less than, when their academic identity has already been undermined, it's very difficult for them to engage fully in everything that it takes to become a proficient reader. I think the second barrier is the fact that we have failed to acknowledge that students develop intellectually, they develop reading comprehension skills at different rates, right? And so we've set these sort of arbitrary standards, right? That if a student isn't reading at this level by this age or by this grade, then something is wrong with them. And then we move into kid fix mode, right? And then we start labeling students, which is the third barrier, right? Is that we immediately start to label students as Blue Jays and pigeons, right? As early as kindergarten. So if you can read well, you're a Blue Jay. If you struggle with reading, you're a pigeon. And so, the literacy block, the reading class, is no longer fun for students because, again, they feel like they aren't going to be successful because of the experience that they're having. right? And so I think, when you talk about, the experiences that students are having in reading class, in literacy class, as early as kindergarten, as early as first grade, where they're not seeing themselves represented in some of the materials that are being used by the teachers who are leading those classrooms, when they already feel like they can't succeed because they are receiving messages, right, that make them believe that I am not all that I need to be, right, as a student in this classroom. You start to see students develop some reticence, right, towards not just literacy, but schooling in general.
And to follow up on that, you just mentioned something I think we're hearing a lot about lately. Our students being seeing themselves in the material that they're using. Can you talk about how that is a barrier? And also for those teachers who are trying to find material, how do we, I guess, maintain accountability to ourselves and to our students in the material? Because I know this is high school level, but like Native Son, right? Richard Wright is a great book, Black, main character, but the way he is represented in this text may not be the best way to represent a Black boy, right? And so even if we're finding those materials, how do we make sure we're showing the vastness and the beautifulness of being a Black boy?
Well, I think you answered your own question, right? I think the answer here is we have to be willing to one, diversify the curriculum materials that we use. Black boys aren't a monolith, so just housing books about sports, for example, in your classroom libraries is not sufficient. We have to be thoughtful about the varied interests of African-American boys in particular. That requires you first, though, to know your students' interests, right? And then go out and identify curricular resources that are gonna, one, match those interests, but also be responsive to the needs that students have. I think there's a place for, at the high school level, for example, for books like Native Son. I think that there's a place for books like Black Boy. There's a place for books like Monster. But you want to make sure that as you present those texts to high school students, as you present lower level texts to elementary students, that you are doing so in a way where you are making real world connections to their lived experiences, right? And so when students don't see themselves, even if the main character is Black, right? If that student doesn't see him or herself in that book, they're going to have a hard time being able to connect with it at a level that's really going to help accelerate their literacy development. And that doesn't mean, though, and I want to be very clear about this, that we only expose students of color to books about children of color or books written by Black authors, right? There's a place for them to be exposed to other cultures and other ways of thinking. But, particularly in the early grades, we want to make sure that we center the experiences of those students in the curriculum materials that we use and the tools that we use to teach them.
Thank you for that. So yes, Dr. Anderson, could you talk about the barriers Black boys experience in school success more generally?
Yeah, so there are multifarious barriers when you look at school success, and a lot of my research deals with identifying teacher interactions and also school practices that cause pre-adolescent Black males to devalue and or disengage from school. And so just to kind of name a few, there's a foundational research done by Dr. Jawanza Kunjufu, and he coins this term called the fourth grade syndrome. And in the fourth grade syndrome, he notes how in the fourth grade, you start to see in this national trend where African-American males tend to have a drop in academic achievement. And so what is creating this phenomenon across the nation in both middle class, lower class SES neighborhoods and schools where African Americans collectively tend in the 4th grade to have this drop. And so that was what I was really interested into identifying. And so throughout my study, there were a few strands and themes that I saw. And some of the themes can be, of course, generalized to all students. Like, for instance, there was a theme within the research about how teachers rely so heavily on just worksheets. And you're doing worksheets and you're reading from a book, but there's not really authentic learning. And because of that, students just see school as just mere busy work. There's no authenticity. How does this help me outside of school? Another theme is just being completely absent from the curriculum. You don't see books that look like you. The topics in class, even the culture of the classroom, the teacher that you have the class with, maybe some of the themes that she's talking about or referencing and her interests, you don't even feel like you're included in the classroom. But there also were some themes that were acts of marginalization towards Black male students. And there was this, even in the elementary school, this intensified policing of students, Black male students, with sagging pants. There was a situation where there was a teacher at a school where I visited, where on the front of her door, she had a sign that say, pull your pants up before you come into the classroom. And this was at the elementary level. And students were being written up before they even started their first class, just by walking into the school building at 8 o'clock in the morning. And if the teacher say you have sagging pants, they would be sent right back home. And of course, they're not engaging in the learning process. And we talking about kids as young as 3rd graders who are being sent back home. I even stopped one of the kids and asked him, what's the deal with the sagging pants? He's like, well, and I get all my clothes from my big brother. And so I noticed that all of his clothes were really baggy. And we don't realize this is not sagging pants to be a part of some type of a culture of hipness. This is a kid that comes from a household where they pass their clothes down because they can't afford new ones. And the kid had already, we were in September, the kid had already been sent home 3 times for sagging pants. And so that is a barrier. Another one that I saw in crazy things is like this targeted exclusion. So you'll find that in many school districts, they call it here in South Carolina, the magic number. And what would happen is that every student has a district has a minimum amount of referrals that a student has to get in order to be recommended and for the alternative school to be taken out of the public school and placed in alternative school. And so what I started to see were there were some Black male students who were being written up for very minor infractions. One of the write-ups was a student got written up, Black male, for giving a teacher a look that could kill. And you sit there and you're like, how in the world can a kid get written up for a look that could kill? And me just being curious as a researcher, speaking to the teacher, and the teacher says, well, yeah, the teachers in my pod, we're just trying to get him to, that magic number. And so they were trying to get him to 15 write-ups as soon as possible because they felt like they didn't have the necessary skills to handle such a troublesome student like him. And so what you saw was this active participation within teachers within this pod that teach these groups of students to push the student out to the alternative school as soon as possible. So you start seeing, these crazy referrals going up all the time. And the kid is getting labeled as a troublemaker because every time you're seeing this kid in the principal's office. But if you actually look at the referrals, you're saying, wait a second. Another instance is that same kid got written up for punching a kid on the bus. And on the referral, it actually lists, punch another kid in the face for what reason, I don't know. And they, sent them home for that. And I'm looking at the referral and I'm like, how do you punish a kid for punching, but you have the audacity to write on the referral, you don't know why he punched a kid. And so me, again, Asked him, so why did you punch the kid? Well, I was called an N-word on the bus by a white kid. It's like, wow, don't you think that that's something that the school should know, that you have another student that's in the school building that feels comfortable enough in the 4th grade to go around and call other students of color N-words? That's something that should be addressed. And so there are so many barriers that are oftentimes unconscious and are subtle, but one of the best sources to figure out what some of the barriers are students themselves. If you really were to sit down these elementary students and you gain a relationship and you really ask them, you know, what are some things about school you dislike? What are some things your teachers do that you dislike? What are some rules in the school that you really, really hate? I mean, it'll be Pandora's box. I mean, really, when it comes to understanding barriers specific to your school, ask the students, because there's no better source than students.
Right about that, which is why oftentimes we don't ask the students, because we don't really want to know.
Yeah. Oh boy, because if we ask the students some of these stories about,
we're gonna find out.
Some teachers will be in some hot water. Yeah.
My grandmother used to say, out of the mouths of babes, right? They're gonna tell you.
And I'm not the one to depict all the fault on teachers and say, well, teachers are the enemy in all of this too. You know, I think that it is a multifarious situation. There are parents have to do their job too, because teachers cannot serve as the educator and the parent as well too. There are some things that need to happen in the household, because just like how my parents got me hooked on phonics because I was struggling, parents have a role and responsibility too. That if there are areas in which your child are struggling academically, it is your responsibility as a parent to provide the extracurricular activity outside of school so that the kid can get the need that they deserve, as well as discipline infractions. Every kid is not perfect, but Ann Ferguson says in her book, Bad Boys, Black boys have this unique phenomena that they are adultified, that the actions that they do, they don't come off as childlike. It seems like when Black boys do it, it's intentional. They're adults when they do things. And I think that is a terrible approach, but it's a common approach. And we have to, it takes a team, and parents have to be on board and have to do their part in looking and asking the questions about these referrals. It takes a team to really get to the bottom of discovering what are the barriers at success for a student, because every student situation is different.
But what happens, right, when parents don't have the skills or the foundation in literacy, or, you know, the educational foundation, because they've gone through the same system? How do we, as educated people, whether we're teachers or we're professors or whoever we are, how do we then just say, that's your responsibility, right? Because yes, it is. Yet, if there's no going back to, you know, and educating parents and getting their literacy or telling them what a referral actually means, how do we get there, right? So I just wonder, you know, what you would say to the ways that this is a system that is generational, and that might be, because I think as educators, we're like, where's the parent? But we don't account for the ways that the parent has gone through a system also.
Yeah, I want to say this: schools are a microcosm of society, and what I mean by that is that the same issues that plague our society in terms of racism and the urge for so-called immigrants of the country to assimilate into American culture, which really is mainstream white culture, Protestant culture, is the same thing that you see happening in the school system. I'm a pragmatist, and as somebody that comes really pretty fresh out of a classroom and into higher ed, I think oftentimes education researchers, what we can do is we get out and we go into these professional development seminars, and we go in front of educators and we give these very big, broad ideological themes about what's wrong with education. And we talk about these systemic issues that is wrong with education. We talk about parents and we talk about, systemic racism and culture. But for the teacher who's attending a professional development, a teacher is looking like, what can help me in the next 180 days? These broad ideological perspectives, they sound good, but I need something to help me with Tyrone today.
Exactly.
And so my comments have to be framed with giving pragmatic approaches to what can a teacher who's listening to my talk take home and in their classroom implement tomorrow. And so the average teacher already is boggled down with standards and emails, and so much stuff is going on. And so the best thing that I can offer is, yes, everything that you said is absolutely right. There are, because of systemic racism in America and in our society, it has created generation of inequality. But a teacher cannot solve the system. One teacher cannot solve the entire system. The teacher can do their part, but one teacher can't maneuver the entire system. And so a teacher doing their part, and what I'm trying to get teachers to do in doing their part is to be, first of all, be educated about what the situation is, and also be empathetic to situations of systemic racism and poverty, and knowing that not all kids come from middle classroom, 2-parent households. And once we educate teachers, we get them to be empathetic, and then we get them committed to pedagogy, like culturally relevant pedagogy or innovative teaching practices. I think when one teacher does that, and it becomes infectious, and the classroom next door does that, and then a school, and that is that culture of the school, that's how we create systemic change. It's by one teacher doing their part. I don't want to ever say to a teacher in 180 days, you have to make Tyrone, not only make Tyrone, a proficient reader, but you also got to change the system as well too. I mean, it sounds good, it's utopian like, but in terms of pragmatism, it's not that really practical. So that's why my comments say that there has to be an attempt, a part of the school, to once you're educated and empathetic to the disciplinary type of history and track record that is across the nation, there has to be an approach towards the school to educate parents and make parents understand what referrals are, and to be open to parents asking questions and to be transparent, and for administrators and teachers to call out other teachers for bad practices. That's what I'm trying to enable teachers to do.
Yes. Thank you for that. And so I want to stay right there, actually, because it seems right that we have these, your research, right? It found that the intense use of worksheets, the targeted exclusion, and the assumption of deviancy were the characteristics of teachers and Black boys' interactions. And then also we have teachers who are trying to navigate the system, and especially this year with the pandemic, they've been tasked with those two things that you just said they should not be doing, right? How do we teach healthy in a healthy environment, but also ensure students are reading and not falling behind, which is really, really sad. And so we're seeing all of these barriers, whether they're individual between the student and the teacher, or they're on a more broad level and seem like very deep issues. So what should we keep in mind when it comes to these barriers and preparing K through 12 students for higher ed?
Few things is that the experience at the elementary level is going to dictate how a kid, those formative years, is going to engage in school, in middle school, high school. What you go through in elementary, kids decide that they're going to drop out really at the elementary level, just based upon those first few years of experience.
Mm.
Those are the formative years. And so we have to get the job right at the elementary level. That's critical. That's why programs like Call Me Mister exist, so that you can provide more culturally diverse educators at the elementary level, because we realize that the elementary age is so critical to kids wanting to go to college, wanting to complete their high school diploma. The other thing that we can look at about how these barriers impact education as a whole for Black males, not only their persistence in school into higher education, but I would want teachers to understand that once you understand what the barriers are, do something about it.
Mm.
You can't just be complacent and be silent about it. And you can't be silent about the teacher that you know that's next door to you, that's a little racist or has some bias against students who may not be from, middle class, the kids that come to school and she feels like, or he feels like they're dirty and their clothes don't look as good as others, and there's some differential treatment. You have to be able to understand what the problem is and speak out about it. And so that's what I'm trying to encourage teachers to do, because it's through that way that we're going to create, really lasting systemic change.
Absolutely. And I want to shift gears a little bit back to Dr. Allen, because I think this connects to what Dr. Anderson was just saying. So Dr. Allen, you talk a lot about the importance of holistic wellness. And so what does holistic wellness look like now that we know these barriers, and Dr. Anderson is encouraging us to commit to responding to these barriers once we see them? What does holistic wellness and learning look like for Black boys specifically? And I'll also ask, how does that holistic wellness learning support the mitigation of Black boys being victimized?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I agree with Dr. Anderson that it's unfair to expect that teachers should or can shoulder the burden of systems disruption, right? It takes district leadership, it takes school leadership, in some cases it takes politicians to all be a part of that resolution, right? Recognizing that, as the principal said in the beginning of our conversation, Principal Owelu, that the system isn't failing, the system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, right? And in fact, the system is working perfectly. And so my charge to teachers and leaders is to see themselves as systems disruptors, right? That we can't continue to go along and help perpetuate a system that's doing children. The problem is that families and children with social capital are benefiting from this system, right? Like they aren't seeing the types of devastation that we're seeing in our communities. They're not seeing the type of academic outcomes, life outcomes that we're seeing as a result of policies and practices that have led to the subjugation and oppression of Black people. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, when we talk about these overly punitive disciplinary practices that we see in play in schools, when we talk about the preponderance of worksheets, we have to ask ourselves why that is. And I would assert that one of the things that we have to think about and really reflect on as we talk about building communities and schools that are holistically well, we have to start thinking about the root cause of those types of practices. And I would argue that it's fear, that we have been socialized into believing, right, that Black males do harm to folks, right? We have this inherent fear of Black males. So what we're talking about are tools of control, right? So when I think about what does a a school that values the wellness of Black boys. What does that look like? Well, it's a school where Black boys are free to have fun, right? It's a school where they are free to fail, right? It's a school where they are free to explore, right? Explore their own curiosities, both academic and otherwise. And what I notice in my work is a lot of the schools that I visit where Black students, African-American students make up the majority of that demographic population, I see places where there's not a whole lot of joy in those schools, right? And I'm not blaming anyone, right? What I'm saying is that there's so much of a focus on academic outcomes that we gotta move this metric, right, from this percentage to that percentage, or we have to improve from this percentile to that percentile, that we've forgotten what's most important, and that is, what are the experiences of these students like? And how can we make schools where students actually enjoy showing up and participating every day? And so if I'm a student and every time I walk into a school, I got a teacher nagging me about my pants sagging, or I walk into a classroom and I'm told that I'm in the low group because I haven't met some arbitrary standard, right? Then I don't like school. School is not an enjoyable place for me. And the minute that I can not go to school, I am going to elect that option, right? I'm going to find ways to disengage. And I think that's part of the problem. But again, to your question more specifically, I think it starts and it ends with the development of positive relationships with both the children that are served and their families, right? I mean, that's what this is all about. If you have positive relationships, if you make an effort to get to know the students that you're serving, if you get a chance to make an effort to get to know their families, and you see your families and your students and the assets that they bring to the table, then it's hard to disregard them. It's hard to exclude them, right? Because you see their value. And I think it starts there. I think it also starts with teachers and school leaders developing a critical consciousness that gives them the ability to reflect on their own philosophies and mindsets about what they think students of color, particularly Black boys, can and cannot achieve, right? And begin to question that. I think only when you begin to do that, only when you center the experiences and not the outcome, right? Only when you begin to reflect on your own mindsets, can you create a place where students, all students, regardless of color, regardless of SES status, right, feel valued, feel affirmed, and feel connected to that school environment. When we do that, the outcomes will come, right? We'll see improvement in literacy, we'll see improvement in math, but until we get the experiences right, we're going to continue to struggle.
Thank you for that. I want to switch back to Dr. Anderson for one more question about how do we advocate for more Black male teachers in the classroom without minimizing the labor of female teachers, especially Black female teachers?
Good question. So we know that the teaching population now is around about 80% in the country female, about 20% being male. The purpose and necessity for attracting Black males into the classroom is that representation matters, that our student population is increasingly diverse, but our teacher population demographic is not. And so programs like Call Me Mister exist to balance the playing field. But this is not to say that an effective teacher has to be a teacher of color. A Black male does not necessarily have to have a Black male teacher in order to be effective. What you need is someone that is empathetic, that not only is empathetic, but understands culture, that is have high standards for all students and is equitable in their practices. Me, in terms of what I do to attract Black males into teaching is, some of the best teachers I found did not come from traditional roles. I can tell you, I just graduated my first physical education major teacher this spring, and he started out as my gym trainer. And I noticed that while he was training me, he would break down skills in the gym like how a teacher would in the classroom. He would always start with an introduction. I noticed how he would model, then he would do guided practice. And so one day I said, have you ever considered, being a teacher? Because the things you do in the gym are just like quite excellent. No, I'll never be a teacher. I can't teach people. So, no, you're already a teacher. I mean, you're teaching me. You do really good. And he was working with, middle schoolers that were coming in and they had health issues and they needed to lose some weight. And I said, I want you to come see me at South Carolina State. And 4 years later, he became my first physical education graduate. And so what I realized is that you find great teachers in people who have the skills and characteristics of great teachers, but never considered teaching as a profession. Why is that? Because they never had a Black male teacher before. And so this is not a profession they even think that they can go into or thought about. And so what I do is I look for those skills and those characteristics. And I find some of my best teachers are ones that you would not even think or imagine would be a great teacher. One of my misters, who is a recent teacher of the year, when I first met him as a freshman, he had some charges. He had went to jail before, hanging around with gangs, had a firearm, he has tattoos, sleeves all up and down his arm, tattooed out. And you look at him, ain't no way this man is going to be a teacher. But I realized this brother is so passionate about working with young people, and especially young people who go down the wrong path. His whole thing is, I'm trying to prevent people from going down the path and make bad decisions that I will. You see him not in a school system. He goes up to the biggest and baddest kid, sometimes bigger than him. And within a month, the kids that went through school this whole time that nobody can get through, badly come to school, and he's getting these kids, engaged in school. I mean, kids who have F's, and now they in his classroom and they AB scholars. Like, how does that happen? It is because we have this framework of what a good teacher should look like. But I try to find characteristics. I don't think there's any type of way that a good teacher look like, but I think that there are good characteristics that every teacher should have. And that's what I look for in teachers. And I find them all the time in barbershops, in grocery stores, everywhere I go, I find good teachers. That's kind of my secret.
Awesome. Awesome. I love it. I love it. And jumping back to you, Dr. Allen, for those teachers who are with us today who may be thinking about furthering their education, why is it important for the educator to continue to be educated? And how can we ensure that we remain accountable and committed to pre-K through 12 Black boys as we continue our education or move up the schoolhouse ladder?
One of the characteristics that I didn't ask Dr. Anderson this, but I'm assuming that one of the characteristics that he looks for in potential teachers is a love of learning, right? And this thirst to continuously improve their craft, whatever that craft is, whether it's being a fitness trainer or a barber, et cetera, like they have a thirst to get better. I think teachers, and not just teachers, but leaders, right, should always prioritize their own development and growth, right, as they engage in the profession of educating students. The educational landscape is dynamic, it's volatile. There's always new policies that are coming down the pike that schools are subjected to. Society is changing. Demographics of schools are changing. The expectations that are placed upon teachers are ever changing. Here in Illinois, they just released the new culturally responsive teaching and leading standards, right? That's going to impact the experiences of pre-service teachers. Leaders and in-service teachers have to be aware of that. right? They have to know what these new standards are asking them to do. What are the expectations that are being set for them? So it's important that we are committed to ongoing education, ongoing learning, because we expect it of our students, of our children. And, you know, we should never hold our children to higher expectations and standards that we hold ourselves. And so this commitment to your own investment is tremendously important, that you prioritize your own evolution within the field, right? Like what you did. I mean, let's look at how quickly things can change, right? Like what made a good teacher 19 months ago, right, doesn't make a good teacher today, right? We don't know what's coming. And so if we aren't serious and committed to our own education and growth, we aren't serious and committed to finding strategies that engage all students, then we're all talk, right? Anybody can go on Twitter and tweet something cool sounding, anybody could put something cool on Facebook, but like the real work around creating, you know, equitable school communities is happening within those school buildings. And it's going to take teachers to do this, it's going to take committed leaders to do that. And that doesn't happen without re-educating yourself and exposing yourself to experiences that's going to help shape and reshape who you are as a leader and as an educator in general.
Absolutely. So listen, whoever's out here listening, whether you're a staff person in the building or teacher, we really encourage you to continue to learn. We're going to end with just what are your recommendations for this audience? If you have any recommendations you would like to share. I mean, you've been dropping recommendations right and left, but if there are any last words that you would like to impart with this audience. We'll start with, Dr. Allen, go ahead.
I'll start. I'm hearing Dr. Anderson say, you know, not exactly this, but what I'm hearing him say is like, what can a teacher do tomorrow? Like we talking all this theory and these big ideological concepts. What can a teacher do tomorrow? You know, tomorrow a teacher could stand out in front of their door, students come in and say good morning, right? And give every kid a pound. You know, tomorrow they can call up the parent of a student and tell that parent something positive about that child, right? To me, it begins and ends with relationships, all right? It begins in being intentional about creating positive, affirming experiences for students that make them feel good about coming to school. You don't need a curriculum to do SEL work. Like you don't need a curriculum to check in on the student and ask them how they're doing. You don't need a curriculum to call up a parent and say, hey, you know what, Naya did really well today in class. And I just want to let you know that it's a pleasure having him in the classroom. Like we can do these things and it doesn't cost us anything, but a little bit of time. And so my recommendation to teachers tomorrow is to start your class with the morning meeting, asking students how they're feeling and what's happening in their lives. You know, making students feel excited when they walk through their, you know, cross your threshold, make them feel good about them being in their classroom. And I think those are the kinds of things that we have to commit to doing. That, again, you don't have to go sit in 8 hours of professional development to do that. You just have to be willing to do it, to see that it's necessary for you as the teacher to forge those positive relationships so that students are trusting of you enough that they will engage in learning, which we know is a vulnerable experience.
I concur. I agree with what Dr. Allen says. I guess a good way to put it is be the type of teacher for your students that you would want for yourself or for your own kid.
That's right.
Bring that passion to the classroom and be educated. I'm going to drop a plug. I mean, if you definitely go out, buy my book, What's Up with All the Black Boys Sitting in the Principal's Office, or my second book, Doing Something About It. But get educated on the issues and bring passion back into the classroom. As Dr. Allen alluded, I think everything he said is perfect. Being passionate, being engaged with students, building relationships is key. So that would be my recommendations.
Well, thank you. I've been encouraged by this. So I hope our teachers today have been encouraged to continue to do the work. Once again, thank you, Dr. Allen, and thank you, Dr. Anderson, for this wonderful opportunity to explore how we all can support Black boys increasing their literacy proficiency. So I'm now going to open it up to the audience for any questions you all may have for Dr. Allen or Dr. Anderson, and we'll hear their thoughts on that. Thank you again. And so, yes, let's hear some questions. Yes, so thank you. I just am full of gratitude. I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I have been like transformed by this conversation, Dr. Allen and Dr. Anderson. And so 2 questions that I am seeing that we have, and I'll start with Dr. Allen. Oh, did I lose him? Let me see.
Oh, I'm still here, brother.
Okay, let me see if everyone can see you, hopefully. I think we can only see me, but we're gonna get you up here. I'm just gonna, oh, there's Dr. Anderson, okay. And then we'll wait for Dr. Allen. We'll just be together for a couple more minutes. I believe I have 2 questions, one for each of our speakers, and then we'll announce our winners. So please stay with us. I'm glad you all are here. We have over 60 people with us. And so, yes, this has been a great, great time. So Dr. Allen, what are some interventions that may help those boys who are already behind in the 4th grade?
So you're not going to like my response to this question because I'm not a fan of interventions. I think intervention is simply a fancy way of saying we have to fix the kid and not fix the system. Right. And so what I encourage schools to do is to spend less time thinking about interventions and more time thinking about how we can improve the quality of instruction across the board. Right, because think about what happens when what an intervention typically looks like. And I remember being a young teacher early in my career. I was working at a elementary school on the south side of Chicago, and I was the intervention teacher. And essentially what I did was I would go, the teacher would tell me who the struggling students were. I had a mobile chalkboard. I would take those students out the classroom, and it wasn't enough space, so I had to find like a little space underneath the stairwell, and that was like my little classroom space, if you will. And I spent time with those students. Now I loved it because I got a chance to build relationships with them in a small environment. But what we were doing was we were blaming the student for the fact that they were struggling in that classroom. And we did not look at the quality of the instruction. We did not look at the quality of the teacher practices that were being implemented. And we simply said to the students, well, you're struggling, so it's your fault. Right. And so interventions for me is victim blaming. If a student is struggling, let's not let anybody off the hook. Let's look at what's happening in that classroom. Let's provide the kind of coaching and professional learning that teacher needs to be able to deliver quality instruction so that all students have an opportunity to succeed in that classroom, as opposed to saying, you know what, Mr. or Mrs. Teacher, you don't have to worry about this kid. We're going to let somebody else take care of this kid. He becomes somebody else's problem. And so then we develop these practices where it becomes part of the culture to then push off students, mostly Black males, to somebody else, as opposed to saying, let's figure out how we can engage all of these students and improve the performance of all of these students, as opposed to saying, these are my kids and those kids are somebody else's responsibility. Right? We do the same thing when it comes to labeling students for special education. I worked at a school where African Americans made up 30% of the school, but 98% of students that were in special education. Why? Because the attitude was someone else needed to intervene and fix these students. That's not my problem, that's someone else's.
Yeah, and that's so interesting, right? Because as Dr. Anderson was saying earlier, it's not the teacher's job to fix the international system of all the drama that we're facing in our world. But also when it's right in our classroom, are we willing to step up and say, this is a systemic issue, or this is a personal issue, or this is a classroom issue, and I'm going to face this challenge in my classroom, right? What can I do? I love that. That will inspire the teacher next door, right? That will spread something like a wildfire throughout our building. If I just focus on the 25 or 30, or, I know the numbers are growing on us and sometimes they're going down, hopefully, but if I can face this challenge, and it's not a challenge, it's just the diversity, right? And the inclusion, right? I heard someone say, diversity is just saying, oh, everyone can be in the room, but then inclusion saying, can somebody be at the table, right? And then equity is saying, can everyone speak at the table? So no matter people's learning ability or reading proficiency, are they allowed to participate in the classroom? So thank you for that, Dr. Allen. And so Dr. Anderson, the question we have for you is, what can early literacy success mean for a Black man's life, adulthood, right? And I want to build on that because, right, someone was in the chat and saying, like, I love our Black girls, but our Black boys need the focus, right? Yes. And I also want to highlight that Black women are said to be the most read group in comparison to others. So what would it mean for Black men to be stronger and more avid readers? And I'm speaking adulthood because I do think that connects to our conversation.
I think when you look at what gender tends to struggle the most in literacy, I was just teaching this in the class that I'm doing at SC State with the teacher ed candidates, is Black males tend to struggle the most at literacy. And it is this stereotype that we have certain subjects in school that are either considered that's the feminine subject or that is the masculine subject. So for boys are expected to be good at math, and they're supposed to be good in PE and sports and science. And we expect girls to be good in music and the arts and drama and ELA. And we were looking at just how unconscious type of bias, where there were different studies where there were certainly teachers who had different expectations for boys in ELA than they did for girls, and vice versa with the subjects. What does literacy mean for a Black man's success in life? And that is a interesting question, because any skill, literacy, math, science, all academic skills are going to certainly make life a lot easier as a Black man in society. There's so many type of systemic racism and barriers for a Black man in society. And so I can, again, speaking to me, by my parents giving me that hook on phonics as a little boy, it is why I now can sit as an author, a PhD, somebody that has a command of my literary skills now. It's because of that early advantage and boost that I had. And so really what you're doing is by promoting those skills at an early age, you're giving your child a bump or a head start, if you will, in being successful in life, no matter what career that they go in.
Absolutely. And, Black women have the answer, right? Like, we are seeing that success, right? We know statistically more educated, more financially stable, right? These things that we see among Black women. And so we know that the science is there, the research is there for all groups, right? Not just racially Black students, but we know that this will have such an impact in the future. I do see Dr. Allen answered Ms. Williams' question, which I was gonna pose. So he answered it in the chat. So I hope that's okay for you, Ms. Williams. And if Dr. Anderson wants to comment on that, there is a question that was posed in the chat about what are your thoughts about small group learning, and do you consider small group as intervention if it is happening in the classroom? So Dr. Anderson, if you would like to respond to that in the chat in our last few minutes, that's totally fine. But I just want to thank you both for just the knowledge. I know I've said thank you a million times, but I just cannot stop saying thank you. So I hope that is a testament to the success of your literacy, the success of your research, and the success of your commitment to give back to our communities. And so we really appreciate that. I am going to get to the moment that we all have been waiting for, who are our winners. And so we have 4 winners just in. And so for the Treat Yourself, I should say, I'm sorry, Dr. Allen and Dr. Anderson, you have been requested to visit some schools. So you'll probably be, contacted, or whether it's virtual or in person, I'm not sure, but look out for some emails, and we're just really grateful. But okay, I'm sorry, I'm not gonna make you wait anymore. Treat Yourself, the winner of the Treat Yourself gift card is Latrice Whitfield. Latrice Whitfield. So congratulations. Please enjoy that. All those options for self-care.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we will email you this gift card. It's a virtual one, so you don't even have to wait. You should have it very soon. Bath and Body Works gift card is Marcy Haynes from Sumner Academy. There we go, Sumner. So Marcy, please look out for that email from us. And the Amazon gift card is, I believe I have your email. I believe this is your name, Canarsie Harris from Legacy. Sorry if I mispronounced your name, but there we go, Legacy. Congratulations.
Carnice Harris, thank you.
Thank you for correcting me. Yes. Carnice Harris, thank you so much, and congratulations. And then our last winner for the Visa gift card is Ray Lynn Giddens from Kelman. So congratulations. Woo-hoo! So yes, all of you, please look out for those gift cards. We will email them.
Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. Thank you to you all. I hope you received your goodie bags. And please look in that envelope. There's a very special gift that's very small in size, but is a special gift, an Uber Eats gift card. I don't want you to miss that. So in that envelope with the thank you card is your dinner on us, as we say at the Staines Family Foundation. And so just for some closing remarks, because it's just been so great to spend this hour and a half with you all. And I want you all to enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you on behalf of the Staines Family Foundation, all of our partners. I will even speak for our principals and our community organizations, our youth. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to just be celebrated. Thank you for allowing us to celebrate you. And, please know that this is not the closing, but it is the beginning. The gratitude continues, the celebration continues, and most importantly, our service to North Lawndale students and families will continue. In the coming weeks, months, and throughout the year, you will continue to see and work with the partners in this video who provide the one-to-one interventions, tutoring, family education, and support, and teacher support, everything that our speakers mentioned as necessary for literacy success. North Lawndale Reads is designed to win. This year, we are marching toward a goal of at least 65% of our students achieving their literacy growth benchmarks. Together, we can do this. In June, I am a firm believer that we will all get back together and we will all celebrate the extraordinary progress that our students have made toward grade level reading goals. So good night and take care, everyone. We are so thankful. Please have a great night, and we can't wait to see you in June.
All right. Take care.